Hi, George Durkee, yet again with lesson 2D, where we're finally going to create a web app from a web map. And as I've mentioned, I'm revising this whole part of the class, and so I've been sort of rethinking things. And here I've got us doing Experience Builder, which is a different app for creating web maps or for creating web apps. And I think we'll hold that off to the third week. So we won't worry about that in this set of training. So here's where we are at the moment. We've created one feature class, an internal file. We've used a whole bunch of server-based files to create a map. And we've created the web map, which is internal, and you guys can edit it. But only edit the one feature class that we did. So now there's two choices depending on how we do things. You create a web app that itself can be editable, and that's useful when you're working with a group and you want to put something out that's a little more streamlined and restrict some of the tools that are available. Or you can go directly to a web app that's public facing, which the public cannot edit. Or complicated workflow, which I'm going to show you, but you don't have to do it for your map or your app, is to definitely create a web map that's not editable. And I'll show you how to make a view file, which is an exact copy of your internal feature class, but it can't be edited. So that's what you put into your public non-editable web page and or web app. And I'll show you how to do that, but we don't have to do it. Because you can also, as I mentioned in the last video, that you can close your internal feature class to editing and only edit it when you need to and then close it again. So that's what we'll do right now. We'll make a view file of our Geography 66 point line polygon feature class. But before we do that, let's take a look at some of the features that are some of the tools that are available. So go ahead and click on the feature class. And notice your menu items here. You can open it directly in a map viewer or scene viewer. Now I haven't mentioned scene viewer yet, but that's the 3D version of ArcGIS Online, and we'll use some 3D versions in the third week of our class. And you can download it to your desktop, you can publish it, and you can create a view layer. But before we get there, we've already gone over the data, and so notice that there's nothing in the point layer, but if you go to the polygon layer, it shows the one polygon we created. For visualization, again, that's going to be how you define wanting the symbol and the colors, the symbology shown by default. Usage shows how much use it's getting, the number of requests for that file per day. That doesn't seem right, but requests 1500 seems unlikely, so something went wrong there. And finally, settings, which is what we're after here. So here you can mark it as authoritative. So if you're the one in charge of this and it's a really useful file for others, you can go ahead and do that. Or if it's no longer being maintained, you can actually mark it as deprecated. You do want to click prevent this item from being accidentally deleted. That means you get a whole bunch of warnings before you delete it. And when you go ahead and share this any map with this feature class in it with the public, you can click this and it'll automatically ask you, do you want to share this and allow editing? And as it says down here, the alternative is you can create a view layer, and that'll take care of that. You can define the extent again, but most importantly, when you create a feature layer, by default, it'll enable editing, and you have a whole bunch of choices here of allowing different people and different types of editing that you assign. And so run over all of those. They're pretty straightforward, but mostly just accept the defaults unless you have some reason to change them. And after you make a change, be sure to save. And so now let's go back to the overview and let's create a view. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. Share, and this is how you determine who gets to see this. At the moment, I've set it to the organization, which means everyone within the Columbia College ArcGIS Online members can see it. You can also restrict it to just you, the owner. You might do that in the early days of a feature class or something you're working on. And these same options are the same for your maps. And I didn't do that for you. I'll show you that a little later. Or you can release it into the wild so that everyone, the public, can take a look at it. And if you have a mixed set of permissions, so your feature class is only available either to owner or organization, and yet your map, you want everyone to see it, you'll get a little message say, do you want to extend this permission to all of the feature classes in your map? And then you can decide on that. And you do have to pay close attention to permissions. So when you make something available to everyone, to the public, if there's a file in there that's proprietary, and some of the Esri files are that, where it requires credits to use it, or you've got a restricted file, if you send out the URL to be shared, to be seen by others, it will challenge people with a login to ArcGIS Online, because the restriction is on an individual file, and until you make that particular file public, then people actually can't see the map at all. And a good way to test this, and I'll emphasize this later, but when you finished a map and it's going to be a public map, take the share URL and put it into a private browser that you're not logged into ArcGIS Online, and then see if the map just shows up right away. And if it does, then there's no restriction. If it doesn't, because you're not signed into your AGOL account, it will challenge you if there's a... Okay, so just save that, or save it at whatever level you want. So right now the organization is fine. Go ahead and save. And now let's create a view layer. And it's always good to make clear that it's a view layer, and you keep everything else, and you can put in a summary, but we'll just skip ahead here. Notice that it's going into your data folder, and OK. And it takes a little bit of time, clicks and whirs, and sets it up. And so there it is. And so you've emphasized that it's view, so let's go over to settings. And let's prevent it from being accidentally deleted. But notice that by default, editing is not enabled. So let's save our change there. And back to overview. So the way you'd use this is to put this into your into the map that's going to serve as the basis for your public-facing web map or web app. So let's go back to our map, and then there's going to be a little sleight of hand here, so follow me closely. Notice that the editing tool is available for your points, lines, and polygon layers. But we're going to want our app based on a map that the public can't edit. And so what you can do is you can save as, and it puts in copy, but let's put in public to show that it can't be edited, and save map. And then you'll want to remove the editable layers. And add the view layer that we just created. And notice it puts in that polygon we'd created. Then you save this. This is your public map. And notice that the edit tool disappeared because, of course, editing is not allowed in these 3 layers. Now finally, let's create an app. So there's a number of ways to do this. First off, let's share it with just Columbia College. And there's a link, and it's just asking us. This is what I meant earlier about update sharing. So the view layer had not been shared with anybody, so now it's asking if I want to share this with Columbia College and to apply that sharing to that file. So yes. And now, finally, at long last, we're going to create a web app. And here you can choose a template from a bunch of existing templates, and I want you guys to go through a couple of these and just get an idea of what's available. There's a zillion of them here, but there's a few basic ones that work for a number of things. And so you can actually check on them by clicking on it, and then you can preview what it looks like. So that gives you an idea of what kind of template you'll be working with and whether that fits your needs. So here's the basic template of that particular one I just called up. But anyway, just go through them and see what appeals to you. We'll close out of that one. What we're going to do is go to the web app builder, and we're going to build one from scratch. And so we'll keep the title and obviously keep it as public. And the summary, we should do a better job on entering a summary, but we're just moving right along here. Get started. And then the template comes up. Notice that it loads automatically the map that we're going from, and it still has the polygon we drew. And so now I'll show you the various tools. So notice the blanks here. These are for widgets to put in, and a widget is a tool that can act on, that can interact with the map and give you more information or measure things or a number of other possibilities. And you can also choose just to put in one of the existing themes, which determines where the widget and toolbars will go, but we'll stick with this one. And then the next one is you can go to the map. You can change the map. You have to be careful when you do this because some of the tools will only interact with some of the map types you've set up, although for our purposes this early in maps that isn't super important. They'll all be interchangeable. And then you can decide a couple of settings, default settings, whether you use the current map view, which is the map view that you set on the app, or use the web map's default extent, which is the way you'd leave the web map on how it opens up. And I usually actually leave it to the web map's extent. But experiment around and decide what you want. And you can customize some of the scales and set the refresh interval. So if data is coming in, then that's kind of important. So if you remember the layers in our fire map, which are included here, of course. So the VERS satellite imagery is updated, and what you just mostly keep it at is honor each layer's interval, because they themselves, each feature class has a default refresh interval on when they check for new data. from the servers. So you can go along with that, but you can also set a time level of when to check in. So now we go to add a few widgets, and notice down here at the bottom, you highlight one of these, which corresponds. You highlight one of these, which corresponds to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and so I'll click on the first one, and let's choose the measurement tool here. And so, especially in a fire map, you might want to give people the ability to measure the distance or the area of a given bit of the map. And so we provide a measurement tool. And notice you can set the units in acres, miles, or you can set it in square kilometers or whatever. And then OK. And one of the good ones to have is a splash screen, so that when the web page or when a web app is opened, a screen immediately shows up with an explanation of what is going to be there, and so you get rid of the symbol that comes with it if you can. Well, okay, don't worry about that. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. But usually this gives any warnings, especially with a fire information map. It gives the limitations of the fire map, how often it's updated, where the official sources are, or anything else people have to know or should know before they use the map. And then I'd switch the type size to medium or large. And you have a full set of typographic tools here, bold, underline, etc. And you can put in images. And so I often, when I want people to understand the tools in here, so measurement and or map layers or things like that, you make a little thumbnail icon, and you can put it in there to show people what the tools are to use in an ordered, bulleted type list. But for the moment, we'll just go OK. And then, as importantly, you actually have to turn it on here. Make sure this is activated. So you get testing 1, 2, 3, 4, blue background. You can change that. And then if you use the map a lot, you might want to click on Do Not Show This Splash Screen. And so then you just click OK. And so I'll do a couple of widgets here, and then we'll move on to attributes. But I just want to give you guys an idea of what's available. So, for instance, if you were to allow editing of any feature layers in here, you have the ability to put edit tools in. You can put draw in. Well, let's do that. We'll put a draw tool in. That'll be fun. And then you can put in location, distance. That's all in meters. We'll go with that for the moment. But you can change all that, the default. Anyway, I want you guys to go through and just get familiar with the various tools available. And the next is, so those show up in your default list here, that was 1 to 5. So now we're going to put some, and these should usually be kind of action tools, that is, measurement, draw, and things you can do directly on the map. So we're going to put in some controller widgets here in the upper right, which unfortunately for my recording I've cut off the far right one, which is the layer list, but I'll show you that anyway. And so, so set the widgets in the controller, and notice that at the moment it's got legend and layer list, and you can add, and it'll be the same bunch of choices here, widget types. So let's do an information one, and OK. And that's the same thing. That's where you can tell this is what the map is about, etc. And once again, you can put lists, you can put images in there, and I would make it a little bigger, medium, and then OK. And once again, I've messed up here, so you can see it way over on the far right here. So it's not quite visible on this recording. And let's add one more. So an important one is share. This will give a short URL for the address to this site, and then you can choose whether you want to share it to email, Facebook, Twitter, Google accounts, whatever. And then you can also add in the organization's URL, but we won't do that either. And then just OK. And that comes up again over on the far right here. And then last, attributes. So here we can change the title, public information. So let's put in the full word information, for instance, just to show you. And then it's got my name and public. And with ArcGIS Web App Builder, but let's put Columbia College. And you can also put an image here. So, you know, if we were really cool, we would put in the Columbia College logo. If you were doing this for your county, say, or your business, you'd put in your business or county logo or whatever. And you can also put in links. And the links would show in the title bar. So if you wanted to put in, say, Facebook, or what I do on Fire Maps is I put in a link to the sheriff's office, which is the official information source, or InsaWeb, which is a source for all things fire, or CAL FIRE, or whatever. But that'll appear in this top black bar there. And this is important down here, subscriber content access. So a lot of times you'll use a feature class that requires a business account or an educational account, which of course the school has. And that works fine, but you actually have to authorize it. And that means you have to authorize your, say, the college's account to use the credits for people accessing the feature class. Now, what you'll sometimes run into is if you unknowingly use a feature class like that, which is fine, the college has the credits, but when you do what I said earlier, is take the URL and put it into a private browser, it will ask you for a password. And often the problem is that that it'll show up here as you'll see it here, and it'll show up as a restricted subscriber content, and so then you just got to authorize it. But that's just something to remember, because it happens and you start banging your head and you don't know what you did wrong, and that's quite often it. And then I've messed up here. So down in the bottom here, it's save, previews, and launch. And so, as always, save your changes. And you can see a preview of how it's going to look. And then you can run through how it's going to look on various devices. So it comes up with the splash screen, and then OK. And they do a reasonably good job of scaling to devices, but it doesn't always work that well. And so this allows you to see what it's going to look like on a cell phone, for instance, and gives you the width and height up here. But that does pretty well. So down here is, again, I've cut it off, but down here in the middle is configure, which just means go back to your configure screen here. So with luck, you've gotten the idea. So for building the app, go ahead and experiment, get a feel for the various widgets and what they do, and put what we'll call the action widgets in to fill up these 5 widget blanks here. And for the other stuff, so your legend, uh, which will tell you what the symbology is here. Notice that, you know, we have the wind speed down here, and our polygon layer, and so on and so forth. Or you can look at the layer list and turn on and off any of the layers. So I can turn off the the polygon layer if I don't want it in there. And you can turn some of the stuff off by default, or I'm sorry, by you know, how the map's going to start. So if you've got a really busy map, you may not want all that data in there to begin with. And so then you can minimize the layer list or exit out completely. And one thing actually I forgot is one thing you do want to include, and we'll go back to widgets here, and let's include a base map options. So then you can change the underlying base map, and you could configure just a subset of these base maps for our purposes, so we'll just leave them all available to people. So for instance, you wouldn't need an oceans base map, but let's just go with everything. And then OK. And notice it shows up way over there on the far right. And so you click on that, and you get all of the base maps. So we can change the base map to imagery with or imagery here, or imagery with labels, which gives you the towns and the place names and things like that. So once again, save, and let's go ahead and launch it to see what it looks like as a standalone. And you get your splash screen, and that's what it's going to look like. And so I think you've got the idea. Here's what share looks like. Notice you get a short URL, and then you can decide on link options, so you can have a whole bunch of options here. You can even paste it into an existing web page if you want. And it's added some more options here since the last time I've used it. So I guess you can add a marker on the map for it to zoom to, and other fun stuff. So fool around with those. I'm going to have to fool around with them myself because I've not seen them before. And let's show you one of the drawing tools here. So you can measure. So let's measure a distance. Well, let's measure an area here. So again, you click to start. We'll just go around our little polygon here, double click to end it. And so it's 20,336 acres, which is pretty cool. So if you've got a fire or anything else you want to do, so clear that. And the same with distance. So figure out the distance from there, 13 miles. So there, and draw. Now this will just draw a you can draw in your own symbols and so on and so forth. Anyway, what I want you guys to do is just fiddle around with the various tools and so on. Just get a feel for them, and that'll help you to make decisions on what you want to include in maps. So in hindsight here, I've probably gone into a little more detail than specifically what these maps need, but a lot of this is wanting you guys to just be aware of what's out there. You may not, for your needs, and even in school right now, you know, you're just taking a course, and there you go, you get your 1 unit and move on. But ArcGIS Online maps are increasingly useful to pretty much any job or discipline. And a lot of what I'm after here is for you guys to remember that this exists, and that for whatever career or even other schoolwork you do, that a map might well help illustrate something to your business or something like that. And there's a huge amount of work going on in business analysis. So there's a great online class from Esri on using maps to analyze business decisions. So you can map, you want to open a coffee shop. So you get a feature class of all the coffee shops in an area, what the average distance is people are willing to travel to get to a coffee shop. And you can look for any holes in the data to find a place somewhere that doesn't have a coffee shop. Well, you're not going to find one of those. But anyway, that's the sort of thing you can do. You can get the income level of the surrounding community. You can do all sorts of things. And if you have a chance, I'm going to give a link to all of the MOOCs that Esri offers. They're really useful and they're free. And they're really well put together. So anyway, there's your basic making a web map and web app. And I might be kind enough here. I'm thinking more about this and maybe require one map on Friday and one app and the app on Monday. But let me think about it, see how much is involved here. And I want to talk to you guys first. I'm doing this before the class starts, so I might make it easier on all of our lives. So okay, I successfully did all of these just up to 2D, and next week we'll work on some other fun stuff, and that'll be in your assignments. So as always, thanks, and if you have any problems, any questions, be sure to email me, gedurkey@sonic.net, and I monitor that quite a bit, so I'm never more than a few hours of getting your message for the most part, and so that'll do it. Thanks. Talk to you guys later.